Hello, friends, and welcome. Welcome to Team Ministry Mindset. It's nice to see you today, this morning. We want to start out by saying, why do we even care about Team Ministry Mindset? And the reason is because we are both products of a team ministry as a child that worked for us.
Actually, what Jen means by the way, hi, I'm Kris. This is Jen. What she means by that is that I'm a first-generation Lutheran. Jen is a first-generation Lutheran. Both of us came to know Jesus and came to know the Lutheran Church because we were both placed in a Lutheran grade school. And now, from that, you have us not only standing here before you, but I'll share a little bit about myself. I serve as the assistant to the district president in the Northern Illinois District. My official title is Assistant to the President - Mission and Ministry, which means in a congregation anything that falls under the word mission or ministry that might happen in a church hits my desk. My job's probably best summarized by the last line in the job description, which is, and other duties as assigned by the president. But before that, I served for 24 years in the parish ministry, 16 of them at St. Paul Lutheran Church and School.
All right, and so I was his sidekick. I was the principal at St. Paul. So he's a muckety-muck now in the Northern Illinois District, but still we talk. And so I retired as principal. I was in Lutheran schools day-to-day as teacher or principal for 33 years, and I retired. And now I work for Chicagoland Lutheran Educational Foundation, and I consult in city schools. In Chicago, which is a great blessing because there's a lot of things that that I hopefully learned during my ministry that I can hopefully help others. So that was the goal. But before that, what Pastor Kris was referring to was my dad placed my brother and me into a Lutheran school for the education back in the 70s, and it wasn't because he was we were Christian, because he was not. My dad was like, nope, not going to church. However, through these wonderful people, at a time when I don't know that Lutheran schools were needing to evangelize in such a way, because there was all the Lutheran kids in the churches and they just all went to the schools, right? You open the door, they come. Well, we were one of those families that weren't not with the church, and my dad just put us in there, and through that he became Christian. I saw my father with my own eyes become Christian when I was 7 and 8, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was due to those people. And so it was like, I look back like that was a church and school ministry that gets it, and so we tried to do the same thing with our years together, and it was great fun. Now I want to ask you, who is here today so we know each other? So let's go on our list. Who's the pastor?
Hey, show of hands, pastors.
Yes,
We got some. Good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Principals. Oh yeah.
Some principals.
Okay. Teachers. Thank you.
Teachers.
DCEs.
Got some DCs.
All
Excellent.
right. Other church workers.
Other church
All right.
workers.
Shout out. What are your other church workers?
Office manager.
Okay. So yeah.
Church and school.
Yeah. Okay.
Church and school office.
Secretary and youth leader.
Secretary and youth leader. Awesome.
Yes, okay. Awesome. Are there volunteers here? I mean, board members, that kind of stuff?
Lay
Right.
leaders.
Thank you. What I'd like you to do just briefly, I know we've been here all 2.5 days already, but do you mind leaning over to the people right near you and just saying howdy and introducing yourself? Because a couple times we'll be saying, hey, will you turn and talk to your buddy, and then just so you know who you're talking to. So 10 seconds.
So you don't know each other yet.
I'm Kate. Nice to meet
All right, we're gonna pull you in. Do you feel like you got to know a little bit about each other, or if you knew each other, you got to know each other a little better?
All right. Always dangerous, but yeah.
Yeah, and one out of the chute as well. We want to thank you all for being here. We know that you have a heart for children, a heart for their parents, a heart for Lutheran education. We do as well, and we appreciate that you're spending a little bit of your Saturday morning here with us as well. So
sure.
as we go, we want to talk a little bit about mindset.
But before we do, let's talk about a couple of things that did not age well.
Like, for example, this little group that you see up on our chart here, it was once said by Deca Records, commenting on them, we don't like their sound, and guitar music is on the way out. In its first demo album.
Same thing with the telephone, it'll never work, right? Said Western Union in 1876.
Then there was also Daryl Zanuck, who said television won't last because people will soon get tired at staring at a plywood box every night.
Right. You know, so we said, and finally, the horse and buggy are here to stay. This is just a fad. This is just dangerous. This is nonsense, right? Says, luckily, Henry Ford kept at it, right? Exactly. So what was in common in each case? The preservation of what was got in front of these people's ability to see what could be. And so our question for you is your team ready for what could be? And
what's next in ministry?
It's all about mindset. It's all about mindset. So the first thing is, I want you to just talk with each other just for a minute or two. What's mindset? What do y'all think? Go ahead. We should have that Jeopardy music.
Yeah.
Like
So
the next man
just turn to
yesterday.
your neighbor and talk a little bit. What do you think mindset means in a church and school ministry?
Right.
And sometimes there's a situation I find that financial like so we
Okay, anybody want to share out? Anybody want to share out what their feeling about mindset is? Go ahead.
How you view.
Hey, a few things, yeah. Anybody else?
Collaborative.
Okay. Oh, that is a part of like a positive mindset, sure. Yeah.
That has a collaborative effort.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Approach.
Your approach to something. How do you approach something? Absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of a buzzword now. Raise your hand if you have never talked about mindset, right? I mean, I don't know. There's nobody, right? But it's important. It's important nonetheless. We our working definition.
Yeah,
then-
so at St. Paul Lutheran Church and School, we kind of had that general definition that mindset is a mental attitude or inclination. It's a way of thinking and orienting yourself around what ministry means when there is a component of church and a component of school working together.
For sure. So specifically, we want to talk a little bit about growth versus fixed mindset for individuals and for teens. And maybe you've delved into this with individual mindset. Look at something like this, where like a fixed mindset, I'm only good at certain things, I give up if it's too hard. We do this with kids all the time. It's like, hey, have a growth mindset, don't give up, right? People who can't take feedback or criticism without feeling like hurt or feeling personally, and I don't like to do anything I don't know. That's very fixed. Not that churches would ever say that, right? Anyway, as opposed to a growth mindset.
Right, and in the church and school ministry that we were blessed to be a part of, we wanted to create an environment that promoted a growth mindset for our total ministry, which we felt meant that we would develop an attitude in each individual of, I can be good at anything, that I try until I get the results that I'm looking for, that I embrace challenges, that I welcome feedback and criticism, and that I like learning about things I don't know yet.
Now, with various degrees of, success, depending on who we're talking about, and also, it didn't all happen all at once. Together, we were there, like Pastor Kris said, together for 16 years. So, at the beginning, people weren't really talking about mindset. We were just trying to move the needle just a little bit. Have you all had a chance to talk about mindset with your staffs?
In your
At
ministry?
all? And think about it. How did it go? Everyone was, you don't have to. But
Well, actually, it looks like a lot of people are like,
No.
they've
maybe
never
not?
talked
Okay.
about it.
No.
okay, so it's a good exercise, but be prepared for a lot of silence or oh boy, because it takes a long time to start talking about change, right? And we're talking about not just changing a thing, we're talking about changing the attitude. So, anybody want to share any mindset conversation stories, or is it too soon?
I don't know if you got a lot.
I
Yeah.
do growth mindset and fixed mindset lessons with my 5th graders.
Awesome.
And I did it with my 3rd graders when I taught 3rd grade for 5 years. And we have a workbook that we go through. And I start out by doing weekly in the beginning of the year before we even do curriculum. And then we change to monthly, where we have a topic of the month. Like this month is the word yet.
Yes. I'm not good yet. Yes. Excellent.
I'm not 6
And-
foot yet.
Stop yourselves.
And it's cool to hear it as a part of their conversation. And my favorite part is when I started doing this a few years ago in 3rd grade, I was my target student as I was teaching. I was
Right.
also learning because
Right.
as a type A perfectionist, I have my heels in the mud sometimes in fixed mindsets. And so as I was coaching them, I was changing my thought process too.
Right. That's a big share, and I would say that's a kind of a great way to even have an entree into it with adults, to say, hey, we should start talking about this with kids. So let's learn about it. That's not a bad plan. Thank you.
What do you use?
There's a book on Amazon. It's Growth Mindset Lessons for Kids.
Okay.
It's a bunch of activities that are really simple. There's a K to 3 option, and then like a 4 through 6 option. And I just pick and choose the pages that I want to copy, and then pick and choose the pages that I want to read, because I know the book really well. Now it's just a part of our day-to-day language. Like when we took our standardized testing last week, we talk about, that's a growth mindset lesson because we take the NWEA map.
Right.
So it's, some are too easy, some are just right, some are too hard.
Yeah.
And we talk about you don't know that answer yet. So
Right.
what does a fixed mindset look like with something that's too easy or too
Versus
hard?
too hard. Helps with
Well,
that adapted test there.
And notice that, expand that out into the full ministry, that sense of we're on a path to grow together. That we may not be at that place where everything is gelling between church and school, where everything is complementary and supportive, but we're on that. That's our mindset. That's where we're moving.
We're not looking for perfect right way. Go ahead, man.
And maybe this will come later, so
Yeah, no, that's right.
forgive me. I would love to think that I am on the growth mindset path, but then when it's tied to anything that you put so much
Yes.
work into,
Personal.
and I'm like a big words of affirmation, so I try to always say, hey, I really liked how you did this, or thanks
Yeah.
for putting so much time into it. Have you thought about? But then when people don't always use that language with me, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
have you thought about this for Lutheran Schools Week? I was like, do you know how many hours?
Right,
that-
right,
And
right,
so
right.
I wanna be
Yes.
that so bad, but when
You're invested in it.
and your time,
Yes.
and then also I'm like, whoa, but I've seen it work. I haven't
Right.
seen this not work yet.
Right.
So that scares me if
Yeah.
we're gonna have all these people in the building for Lutheran Schools Week and it flops.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
know there's some work
Yeah.
that needs to be done on me.
Well, it doesn't mean running into everything new, no matter what, willy-nilly. I mean, that is not growth mindset, right? And we're all on the path, we are presenting and we are perfect, and who is, right? So, yeah.
Yeah,
but
we're not. I am alone, but together. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess how can you, when people have ideas and you have invested so much time, is there a way, like sometimes I'll prep myself before the meeting even starts, like
Yeah.
Lutheran Schools Book went really well. If anybody has an idea, they have an idea, they're not
Yeah.
attacking you.
Yeah.
But sometimes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when I
It's a
haven't
hard
had
thing.
this,
So, you know what? I think we may address it.
okay.
Well, in terms of
Yeah.
just, we're going to talk sort of big picture, gestalt kind of feelings here too. So, if we don't, let's come back. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, it's a collective mindset. So you might be somewhere and someone else might not be. Or if it's a gotcha game at your school and church, that's tricky. And you got, so we all know what happens somewhere.
I'm just becoming one of the older ones on staff, so I want to make sure that I'm like keeping up with times.
Very good. At this point, I'll do a ballet. No, we had that planned. No, I think we're gonna try to share how we do our best to foment an environment that will allow us to even sometimes not have technology go well, and yet we can still move forward in our presentation and whatnot. No, but also I find that a helpful thing when I have invested something in something and then someone says, "Hey, have you thought about doing this instead?" For me anyway, I try to have a regular time to come back to that sense of the effort that I'm doing. I'm not only serving God's people, but it's an effort in response to God's grace in my life, and to be able to hear someone else say, "Well, try something else." For me, I kind of walk in both paths of saying, "Well, this was actually the Lord working through me. He may produce fruit that person may not be seeing." Mm-hmm. But then also, you know what? The Lord also might be using that person to maybe widen my perspective and not receive it that what I did might have been wrong or off, but it might be something that further sharpens me. But a cup of coffee beforehand might be helpful.
Yes. It's literally a team trust issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, and it takes a long time. And I'm going to apologize. My mother-in-law is in a nursing home, and that's the only override I do. And so she'll
Well,
be
you don't
fine.
have to apologize for that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I don't even leave my phone on, all right. Sorry about that. So anyway, we want to say welcome. We're glad you're here. And we know that you might not be the total leader of your team, or you might be. But the team runs the speed of the leader, and even if you're leading from, in the middle, or the second chair, or the whole bit, or you're the big kahuna in your place, we know that if you start on the path of mindset, then your people are only going to be better for it, I think, and we think.
So, Jen and I, we don't feel like we're experts in the field of church, school mindset or education. We're not experts in every situation, but we have had a successful run of ministry together for 16 years.
Yeah, so hopefully some of this stuff you can take back, or you can say that's nuts, so we don't know what not to do, and you can do that too. It's all right. All right, but first, we want to do something and play a little bit of fun with you, and play along in every Lutheran's favorite game show called Let's Name That Status Quo. Name That Status Quo is going to take place this way. We're going to give you 3 traditional opportunities to look at people who are involved in ministry in a church and school setting that may not always be going all that great for them, and you'll guess what status quo we're looking at, and you'll win some fabulous prizes. Jen, show them what we're going to win here. We're going to win a collective set of Lenten devotional booklets from Creative Communications. That's right, where they've taken the fun of Lent and turned it into devotion books. That's right, at Creative Communications, we say if it's not created or communicated creatively, it's not creative communications. We also have a wonderful drink bottle that I found on one of the booths from LDA. What does LDA stand for? I don't know either. Oh, that's right, it's the Diaconate program. Be the first in your gym or school to have one with a patented hourglass design. And then finally, we've got the ultimate prize, a pen from Huntington Bank. Did Huntington Bank have a booth at Best Practices? No, sir.
No! We just found that in my bag and thought we'd give it away to you. Now.
Or maybe we could just play a game. Here's the first guy.
Meet Doug. Doug is the father of 3, has kids attending the Lutheran school, and he would love to connect to a church. But every time that he brings the kids to church, it's hard to manage the kids. They keep getting side-eye when kids aren't completely quiet. It feels like they are visiting a museum or a library at the church. So Doug has decided to wait to enroll in Sunday school and church until the kids can be more well-behaved. What status quo is Doug dealing with?
Anyone?
Children are meant to be seen.
Yeah.
Children are meant to be seen, not heard. Have you ever encountered that attitude? We would say that in a growth ministry mindset for church and school, we want to address that directly. Yeah. Children are welcome.
Any others?
What other way might you describe or characterize this?
Worship's for adults.
Worship is for adults. Yeah. Yeah, rather than that biblical model of welcoming children.
Yeah.
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 And rather,
Baptism as infants, but go home.
what's
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
We baptism as infants,
Right, yeah.
but don't
Come back when you can be
until you're
quiet, right?
Until you can be quiet. Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing because you don't learn how to be quiet in church unless you're doing it, you know what I mean? And I remember once we had a visitor, he must have been coming for like a Advent service, a lot of visitors, you know, Advent service that the kids were doing, and these kids were running down the side aisle, and the one kid says, let's sit in this bench over here. And then the elder had some, you know, little side comment. I'm like, they're new. How do they know? This is awesome. We don't need to correct them on what it's called. Who cares? Yes, you can have this bench, my friend. Yes, you know, it's just a different way of thinking of it, right? All right, the next one is meet Ellen. She's a Lutheran school principal. She loves her school. She loves her job. She loves her pastor. The whole thing is great. Oh,
Wasn't there a prize?
prize!
That's right, give her one of the prizes. Give her the set of deluxe Lenten booklets from
The whole
Creative-
set?
Oh, give her the whole thing. Why
I don't
not? Or
know.
split them up. There were a couple of people.
Oh.
Because we know you didn't get these earlier this week.
Thank you, sir.
No.
Prize here.
Yeah, there was someone else who said
All
something.
right,
Oh,
you got the
you can
set.
take your pick or
You got
take them
the
all.
set.
Oh my.
Share with your
Now-
friends and neighbors
now
now
we're
that
going
you've
to
got them. They'll
Ellen.
want them too.
Now we're going to Ellen. So what she's doing is she recognizes there's a whole bunch of kids who are not church in her school, who aren't Lutheran or maybe have never been to church or don't have a regular church home. And so she would like for the church to be a little bit more welcoming, but it's not happening. She gets shut down with some suggestions. The pastor's nice, but he's not massively involved in the school. So what kind of status quo will we characterize this as?
School is the principal's job.
School's the principal's job. Anything else?
Separation of church and school.
Separation of
Separation
church,
of church
and
and
school.
school. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. The physical layout of St. Paul Lutheran Church and School, we had a street that actually physically separated the two campuses, and we were fond of saying only the street separates church and school
Right.
ministry.
Yeah. In a way,
That's-
it made us be
yeah.
more intentional because we had to make sure that we would say we don't want, you know, this didn't make it over that side of the street. That's bad communication. That sort of thing, you know. But even if you're right next to each other and sharing a secretaries, which I know some buildings are like, things can get lost in the shuffle just by virtue of hours of operation. You know, I was maybe while you were at hospitals, I was at staff meetings. You know, and so we didn't sit at the same staff meetings all the time. So, all right, who gets this?
Someone.
You want it?
Sure.
All
Give it to
right.
someone.
I know how
Give it away.
Go. All right.
Share it with some weirdo at the airport.
Now this crazy pen from the Go ahead,
And now
sir.
finally meet Pastor V. Pastor V is a pastor at a Lutheran church and school, has a clear vision of the role of school ministry in reaching new children and family for Jesus, works well with the principal of the school, a great team member. Every so often, though, at board budget meetings, he contends with leaders who feel that the children's ministry in school is inconsequential and not worth the cost of it, and some articulate that the school should submit to the church, but the church need not invest in the school. What status quo
Does that happen?
is Pastor B dealing with? Yeah, have any of you encountered that? Maybe not your place, but you know it exists.
Whoa, go back.
What would you liken that, or how would you sum that up?
The school's a burden.
School is a burden. Yeah,
Value their mission field.
yeah. It's not a value to the mission
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it is a resource detractor. That's right. Give him that exciting pen from Huntington Bank.
Imagine us saying, "Gee, the Sunday school takes a lot of resources. It's a burden. We're not going to have it." Or, "Gee, right?" Or, "Gee, the VBS." Or, "Gee, the choir." Or But a lot of times that happens. Why? Because the school is a big chunk of change. So understood. But that's why mindset is even more important. And how's it time? Shall we turn and talk about this for a moment? Just for a moment? Or is this like too
Sure.
long? let's turn and talk for a moment about, do your churches and schools, or have you ever encountered this anywhere?
Yeah, any of these three
Regarding
kind
these
of
sort of-
challenges
Yes.
to the mindset.
Let's just.
Go ahead and talk to them.
Go ahead.
Well, the stories you can tell.
Yeah,
So that is one of the things, like, for us to expand to have an
I think we'll just start with it. I think I'm just going to go right to what's on right here. Yeah, okay. I think I'm just going to. Oh, well, we can ask. There's enough time. This is 5 minutes.
This is one of the hallmarks of church with the growth mindset, which we're going to actually say. So why don't you skip right to it?
Okay, yes, okay. That's it, yeah. So we don't have to
let's
talk about it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, boom, boom. So I'll say this, and then you say, you list the next ones, and then we'll go into
Yeah,
it.
you can say, so what do you think? We're going to share a list. Jen?
Yeah. It's. Oh.
I don't know if that is.
No, right. Yeah. All right, 30-second warning. Ten-second warning. And please bring it back. We probably could have just done this for an hour and a half, but we won't, right? Yeah.
I would imagine, though, all of you have experienced, if not those three general challenges, you've experienced challenges to church, school, relationship, and ministry. Jen and I have as well. Both some problems that were, challenges that we would, that were part of school, that were part of church, some that we might have brought to the table and had to grow and learn for ourselves as well. In it, we found then a path forward to really start to look at how can we start to create an environment that actually kind of moves the needle toward health for a church school ministry.
So sometimes, we were thinking, what are the hallmarks of good church and school ministry mindset, togetherness? There are any number of solutions that you might come up with. We're just going to give a few of ours, and some of these are pretty big picture. But here we go.
So we found at our church and school ministry that we had the honor of serving that some of the healthy hallmarks of that good mindset is a shared mission and clearly articulated what that shared mission is. A shared respect and trust for one another in church and school. The ministry of presence, both school being present at church and church staff being present in school ministry. A willingness to take one for the team. We'll talk about that as we dig into these a little bit, what that means. And then also an environment of shared fun, which we're hoping to reflect a little bit right here as well, that we sought to be reminded at the end of the day, hey, those of us that know Jesus, we got life everlasting. So not only do we have a resource of forgiveness when not everything goes perfect, we also have a sense of joy that, we have the gift of Christ, and that can express itself in, especially in an environment where God entrusts us with little ones to share the joy of His love as well.
So we think the first one we're going to dig into a lot because it's big. It's our why, our shared mission. And for our church, it was a church and school. It was not church versus school. It was identified as the primary mission of the church. And this was said across all ministries, at all meetings, in publications, and from the pulpit. And that was a great blessing. And I will say that I walked into the school and church as a teacher probably 16 years before you even came, but it seemed to
I'm
be
that much
like,
younger. No.
Yeah. It seemed to be like that for a good many of those years, but there were times I remember as a young teacher going, I wonder if I should get another job, because there you are at the congregational meeting, right? And you're like, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen now? So it wasn't always smooth, but when we were together, we wanted to make sure it was very clear. If there was a bunch of people that didn't like that the church had a school, you know, we love you. If this isn't for you, we're not going to change it, you know.
Well, I'm going to put that positively to say that there is an opportunity for those who may feel like the school is a burden, especially in the pastoral role, to lead in educating and helping people understand. Actually, this is a great opportunity to reach out with the gospel of Christ, not only to those who may not know Jesus, but to actually nurture the faith life of those that do know him as well. By having that presence of the proclamation of the gospel in the school ministry, but also by being blessed by having a school staff that is also a part of your ministry as well, to value the teachers and the staff that know Christ, that love him, and they want to be a part of a ministry that shares his love as well. I found it important and significant that I was able to share that on a consistent basis, that this is our mission. And that's why we invest in it. And to realize that even if you don't have a kid at the school, that this is still your opportunity to see the fruit of faith as well, to be a part of that ministry.
And all our pastors, this is why he's the boss. That was so positive. That was awesome, yeah. The church did not view the school as that place that takes all our money. Rather, they took a look and said the school is the local mission arm which shares the love of Jesus for 6.5 hours to 300 kiddos, 180 days each year. And then when you do the math, that's a lot.
Yeah, and if you think about it in ministry, in every other aspect of ministry, at 24 years as a parish pastor, I couldn't say that I spent 6.5 hours a day, 180 days a year with any other aspect of ministry. Yeah, and the idea that in Lutheran education that the faith is inculcated throughout the day. That integration. I actually started understanding that like in 7th or 8th grade, because I was going home to a family that didn't know Jesus at all. And I was getting to know him throughout the entire day. And I realized what a difference it was making in my life and in the lives of everyone else.
So just a comment. So I think one of the things that you have to acknowledge, you have to talk with the pastor and leadership in general, and find out if there's a willingness or a willingness to consider looking at the school as a legitimate ministry.
Yes.
And I don't mean that judgmentally. And there's a reality there, because if there's not a willingness on the part of the pastor that's leading that leadership of the church, if they're not willing to consider that as a legitimate ministry, then it's going to be awfully hard to bring those ministries together. The other thing is just a functional one, kind of to the point of what you're talking about here. Several places that I've been, as you're talking about the staff, if you've got called staff that have been traded, through, they're rostered staff through Missouri Synod, those, so you've got your pastor that's theologically trained. If you've got an associate pastor or a deacon or something, they're theologically trained. But those staff are your next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 most significantly trained theologically people.
Yes.
And it's just a recognition.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Amen.
A lot of places where it's not recognized that way, but it kind of people realize, oh my gosh, these people actually have been equipped for
They're
this.
ministering.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to teach 3-year-olds about Jesus and big feelings and big, I was junior high to high school math. I don't know how to do what you're doing with those little kids, but my kids came home knowing Jesus in a way that I don't think I would have been able to properly articulate.
And I would agree that affirming that and being able to affirm that in ministry not only builds those servants of the Lord up in their role, but it also, I think that God bless you, I think that elevates, I do that in sermons too, I think that elevates them the role of word and sacrament ministry across the board.
Yeah.
It really does.
For sure.
Because those folks are there to support the ministry God has given me as pastor. Yeah, thank you.
For sure. And fair play to you. If there is a place that takes a good long look at themselves and say, this is not a ministry, then there's other decisions to be had besides mindset. However, I think sometimes people have never really dawned, I'm not saying pastors necessarily, but just even congregation members or boards or whatever, because now in my role as going to consult in Chicago Lutheran schools, when I kind of say this sort of thing, they're like, oh, so mission used to be, okay, we're sending somebody somewhere that doesn't speak English. Like, no. So probably the reason you're here is because you get it, but maybe everybody else needs to get it like you, and maybe that's your job, at some point. For so many families, a school can be an introduction to church. There's our DCE, Dari, she's fabulous, and it is a beautiful thing when Pastor gets on sermon and says, here's Miss Dari for a children's sermon, and dozens of kids come running up. It's a beautiful thing. There are some school kids, some not school kids. It's awesome. It's a beautiful thing. Maybe you have that at your church as well.
And if I could, we tried to then take a proactive viewpoint of really approaching the events of Word and Sacrament in worship from a child's standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our regular ESV Bibles or NIV Bibles in the pew rack. We have children-oriented Bibles in the pew rack. We encourage moms and dads, open that Bible up during the scripture reading. Find it in the children's Bible as well. We would have, we have activity bags for the little ones. We realize that they're going to be wiggling. They may not be able to handle a full hour and 10 minutes. We understand that. We try to help parents in that role. There was a regular, it wasn't that we designated it, it just happened that way. There would be a regular transept, an area of the sanctuary where, especially during the closing worship song in our contemporary service, little ones would get out into the aisle. They would dance to the music.
Affectionately called the mosh pit.
There was a group that actually would do that at the entry to the narthex as well. And as we as pastors would come out, I kid you not, on more than one occasion, the little ones, as they were there and they were dancing, they would give one of us a hug as we're going out to greet the rest of. And that is, again, that just communicates to folks, this is the blessing of being the people of God together.
Right. Absolutely. It's beautiful and fun for kids. Beautiful and fun. Now here, we also did it at chapel. The parents, we had more parents in chapel sometimes than kids. Well, not quite, but a lot of parents loved our chapels, and I'll put it to you because you can say it's not your regular chapel.
So about 15 years ago or so, we decided as a staff to look at how do children inculcate the faith? How is it that they actually can appropriate understanding what's going on in the Word of God and how that applies into their life? And we kind of came at it from some foundational thought and principle that children often are open to receiving new things, like adults as well, through laughter and play. We also realized that our chapels were very traditionally the style of chapel that I grew up with as well. And that was every staff member had to do at least one. And all of them wound up being object-driven lessons where somehow I knew as a kid going into the chapel that day, this remote was somehow going to be something about Jesus. We decided if we were going to use laughter and play, let's, instead of doing object-driven lessons all the time, could we do character-driven lessons? And we started writing scripts. And we started writing multi-week character arcs that would go from one week to the next, where maybe something wasn't resolved at the end of the chapel lesson. Actually, there was one series that we did. It was called Rachel Redo. Rachel Redo was about a junior hire who, in her grandmother's attic, she found this button. It was the "That Was Easy" button from the department store. But she would hit it, and it would reset time by a few seconds. And we did a few lessons where she was learning morality lessons. She would make a mistake, she'd reset time and be able to do the God-pleasing thing instead of the foolish thing. But at the end of it, the final lesson was going to be that she would, when she really hurt a friend, she broke the button and couldn't reset time. That she couldn't correct a mistake and rather instead would have to learn about forgiveness. That her friend would just have to forgive her. The last episode of that series, of that chapel series, Principal Heinze was walking across the street to get to chapel. A car pulled up in front of the school, and a junior high girl got out. She sprinted over to chapel. Later on, Jen found her and said, "Hey, saw you running to chapel. Was that because you had to usher and you were running late, or you were supposed to run the tech board?" She said, "No, it was the last part of the series, and I didn't want to miss what happened."
Yeah.
We knew that when we got junior hires who would run to get to the content of chapel, that we were onto a good ministry mindset of growth. It also made approachability happen. When you get some of these folks are the pastors, the church staff. Actually, that's all church staff there. When church staff are willing to get into costume, willing to play along with things as well, then we became approachable to the students. Suddenly I wasn't just the guy that preached on Sunday. Now I'm the guy that would get dressed up in a turkey outfit for the Thanksgiving chapel. And play along with them, and it opened them up then to we had one I gotta share one where we took we would look at what's out in pop culture and how can we combine it with spiritual lessons. So we did one chapel where we took the song "Let It Go" from Disney, and we turned it into a song about forgiveness. We rewrote the lyrics, but we did a fun twist to it. The two people that were up to sing it was me and one of our junior high teachers. She couldn't sing, and we were going to do all female voices. So we lip synced. We found the two best singers in church. They sang the lyrics. And then we asked the kids, we said at the end of it, "Would you like to sing along?" And then our tech guy made sure that we did the bouncing ball and could do the last chorus. At the end of it, I remember the 8th graders standing up and cheering. They were so into it. And they learned a lesson about letting things go in Christ, because that's where the lyrics drove.
Now I'm going to be clear. This didn't start out like this. This started out with like the time machine and a smoke machine. And we're like, oh yeah, and then we were writing scripts, and so this is 15 years worth of stuff. But it was a lot of fun, and we would get kids involved, like secret 8th grade man, and all this stuff. So, but if you can, if the vibe is there, or you can, if the vibe isn't there in your church, please, I work in some churches where it would not be this vibe, this would not vibe, But if you can move the needle a little bit toward it's kid friendly. That was the goal. That was always the goal.
Again an openness just to say, how do children appropriate the faith, and try to find it on their level.
Right. And here's something more traditional, but there's Pastor Bo with a guitar, and they're waving their palms. But they get to come up, and it's fun. And then you would take them on a church tour.
Actually, we would, for our preschool, every year we take the preschoolers on a chapel tour, where then we would be able to point out to them, what does the word pulpit mean? What does the word narthex mean? We had the blessing of our structure was in a cruciform shape. So I'd ask them to find all the crosses. Why do we have so many crosses in church? And then let them realize, look straight up. You're standing in the middle of a giant cross. We want you to understand Jesus surrounds you in this place.
And some of our chapels would teach the liturgical elements. Someone would teach like some of the art. So it wasn't just, we weren't just grabbing and being goofy. We were trying to connect it. We can teach, well, today, friends, here's the meaning behind the windows. Or it can be like somebody coming back from the old days. Like, you've been Luther plenty of times.
And we also to teach us stuff about the symbolics of church. We would bring in an archaeologist who would actually then we'd show like the symbol for Adonai in Hebrew, and he would describe it as being actually an ancient symbol for McDonald's. And be completely wrong. And we go, well, all right, it could be that, or it actually could be this as well. And then we'd have the guy say, wait, no, I'm wrong. And he would repeat whatever the pastor actually said as if it was his own idea. And the kids got it. They thought it was funny.
It was good. So, believe it or not, I was a straight man. Anyway, so the question is, does this detract from word and sacrament ministry? And our contention is
that it was supportive of it. That it actually connected the kids to our Lutheran confession.
Human beings are complex.
What's that?
Human beings are complex.
Yeah.
So children can understand what chapel and school is and what worship on Sunday is.
Yes.
And put the two together.
They
don't have to look the same.
Yeah. And we can explain a little bit of the Sunday stuff in a quieter way. Yeah. If you're not sure what kind of change might be needed in your environment for little kids, in your church or your chapel, ask a parent, ask trusted parents, something like that. They know, and they'll probably tell you, and then you can determine your focus on whether that's something that your church and school will vibe with, or is it, if it's something different. Like we said, this is what we did, and this is what worked for us, and it grew over 15 years. Now, all of this smacks of a word which churches often don't like to use. It's the M word, but I'm going to use it. It's marketing, and that so. It used to be a dirty word, right? I mean, maybe it still is in your church, but I think it's vital. And a lot of schools have turned around to be like, okay, we have to market our school. Anybody hear about that? Yeah. Now, 20 years ago, people were like, well, we don't have to market a school. They should just come, right? Does anyone remember that? I remember when marketing first came to schools. And I was a new principal, and like, well, we better do something because, and it's not everybody from the church. So little by little, in schools, we got used to marketing, but still churches are like, it doesn't seem very, Christ-like or something. But I think it's part of evangelism. I think the Apostle Paul was the first marketing guy, actually. When you take a look at 1 Corinthians, where he said, to reach the Jews, I'm going to be like a Jew. To those not having law, I'm going to be like them. To the weak, I became weak. You know the passage. All this so that to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. Isn't that marketing? Yeah. He was reaching people where they were at. He was differentiating. He was target marketing for Jesus. I think it's evangelism. He was just reaching everybody where he knew they were at. He wasn't duplicitous, I don't think, but he. Like Jesus, he went among people and found a connectivity.
I would offer that one of the things that I've learned that I spend a lot of time in the trenches now with congregations on is the reality of the non-believer, as we know by their very nature, they're not. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I think I'll go find Jesus to be my Savior," but they will have a heart for something. And if we can connect to say, our heart is for education. That we want your children to have a safe environment where they're going to learn well. And honestly, we're going to share then also that the alarm goes off sometimes. That we're also going to share why we do what we do and share the faith.
Our mission has always been the same. Our why has always been the same. Connecting families to Jesus. It's just He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's just how we connect might look a little differently. And so, might look a little different. So, shared understanding of school as mission, we think is key. So that's like point one. The other ones are going to go faster, friends. But that to know the school as mission and get everyone on board as you say. All right. Second one, shared respect and trust.
So within biblical authority, the pastor has that call to be the pastor to the entire ministry. Each member of the team has a job. We are the body of Christ together. And there's truly respect for each other's role. So what I tried to do is to bring an umbrella of trust. That I'm going to trust my team. That I trust that Jesus is working through them, that they're believers, and that I'm going to work with them and seek to also be that humble servant in their life as well. So that we need not micromanage. I never attended a curriculum meeting where we were choosing what math curriculum we were going to use. Why? Because I don't know anything about that. If I need to be there, Jen could always say, "Kris, I need you in this meeting," and I'm glad to be there. But I'm not there looking over the shoulder of everything going on in school because I trust my team.
So it's a lot of trust. And then there was also clarity about when to request versus when to inform. I mean, I would be buzzing over to the other side of the street saying, "You got to know this is happening," whatever. But if he didn't require me to ask every time I needed to go on a field trip program, you know what I'm saying? So it was just a very clear line about it. We were having each other's backs.
Well, and notice that might be something that you have. It might be one of those unspoken values. We found it important to occasionally visit that and remind each other that we do have that. Remind our lay leaders that we do have that. so that they're also invited into that mindset to understand, yeah, we trust each other. We're a team together.
And let's talk about meetings real quickly. Meetings we felt needed to be a safe place, a license to think differently, be a sounding board for each other, especially the two of us or the pastoral and principal team. We would agree to make the sausage in private, and then we'll roll it out to staff and then the public. We did not go ahead and say something different than what was agreed upon. And this is all under, or do you want to talk to that, or?
Yeah, you're doing a great
Okay,
job.
awesome.
No, I mean, we would try then to, I mean, if we're going to have difference of opinion as a staff, to work that out together as a staff, so that way when we presented the ministry to public, to the church as well, that we had come to a level of agreement. It didn't mean that we had to be in lockstep on everything, but also to be able to say, you know what, we want to make sure that we're affirming each other in what we're doing and saying.
Right.
And again, under that umbrella of grace, we don't do things perfectly. I certainly didn't either. I wanted to be able to have a staff where they could also approach me and say, wow, are you sure about what you said there, Pastor? And then be able to pause, rethink, and if I needed to say, look, I'm sorry I messed that one up, to know that I can lean on the grace of Christ in my staff's life as well as they for mine.
For sure. It was all under the umbrella of grace, because this was how we lived. We just assumed positive intent for each other, for our staff. Maybe that's how you roll. Sometimes we got burned. Did we get burned? Yeah, sometimes you get burned when you, not with each other, but when you're assuming positive intent.
I tried to burn her all the time.
time.
Well, and also, I want you to understand that we didn't assume positive intent because people are good.
Right.
We assumed positive intent because Christ is present.
Yeah.
Because our Savior dwells in the hearts of His children.
That was our
including
team
us.
mindset, that we just assumed that these people were coming to us with good intent. They could prove themselves otherwise, but within each of us, we definitely assumed that we had each other's back. All right. A little mindset shift, and I just wanted to talk about it real quickly, because sometimes the public schools are those unspoken somethings in school and church relationships, and I believe that the local public schools and the home schools are not adversaries, for many reasons. And I think that sometimes people in your church may say, boy, every kid should go to this school, and boy, we should be mad if they don't, and boy, let's go knock on the doors. And kids are not furniture. You can't just move them from one school to another. If they're happy somewhere, it's our job as principals in school people to make sure that the school is like so awesome that these parents go, why am I keeping this for my kid? But you don't want to be like they're the enemy, because let's face it, folks. I know in my career there were some kids that we could not serve. And we relied on our public school friends for help with special ed, and then sometimes we had to transition them, and it would be a big cry because we don't want to see someone leave. But if they had to leave, it wouldn't be like, okay, see ya, or go talk to them. I would bring them over there and say, here's the lovely special ed director. I think we need this. After months of talking, hopefully now public school ours is great, but hopefully you can make some sort of like relationship like that. It takes some years to gain trust too with an outside entity, but it has been so helpful. Indeed, we also have public school teachers in our congregation, and so as soon as you start dissing public school, what are you dissing? You're dissing people who are trying to be lights in the world where they live.
And so we would try to do just the opposite. When we would recommission our school and church staff each year, after commissioning them, then we would ask anyone who is involved in public education to please stand and realize and acknowledge that they have a vocation from God as well, perhaps in a much tougher place, because we're not advocating that we wholesale adopted the philosophy of public education. We just saw our local public school or our local, homeschooling groups as allies. We wanted them to see us as allies as well. And so we would affirm those vocations and lift them up in prayer and ask them, how can we best equip you for your role in the public sector?
It was massively appreciated. And you may also have public school teachers as parents of your school. That was quite, an honor, So far from adversarial, it was a blessing. And sometimes they would help keep us honest too. And they would, I would take some out to coffee a couple times a year and say, what's going on in public schools? Because, things trickle down slowly sometimes to us through Illinois State Board, but teachers know what's going on.
Well, and in that mindset of merely having an affirming, you belong among us, as the family of faith in the public realm, it
Yes.
led to opportunities to make an impact on the greater community. Let me share with you just briefly a little story about a young man named Landon. Landon was a member of our school, actually. His parents were not members of our church. They both were police officers in two different departments. They had been divorced. Landon was a sweet little guy who wound up with brain cancer. And his parents allowed me to follow him over the years, from hospital to home and back and forth. They didn't join the church, but they welcomed us being there because they knew that we accepted folks being among us. And in seventh grade, the Lord called Landon home. As parents asked if we would do the funeral, I said, of course we would. Now, one of the physical aspects of our campus was that we were woefully under-equipped for parking, and so that Saturday we knew from like 8 a.m. to probably like 3 p.m. we're going to fill this neighborhood with cars. This little guy made an impact on our school, on two different police departments, on fire departments. They had done fundraisers for him. So we sent word out through our parents back out into the public saying, just say to them, look, we're a community grieving, and we're going to fill your neighborhood. Please forgive us for the inconvenience.
The parking problem.
Within hours, there started to become responses on our Facebook. We live in the neighborhood. What can we do to help you?
Yeah.
And we said, we don't know. We're going to do a funeral. Grieve for us. Grieve with us. Be understanding and don't call the cops on our friends who are in your neighborhood. We didn't know what else to respond. That Saturday morning, when I got to church that morning, the facade of the church is stones of different size. Some of them jut out. There's different little landing spots everywhere. The neighborhood families, some who are members of our school, some though who were public ed kids, they went out and gathered stones throughout their neighborhood. They painted them with words like love and hope and decorated the front of our church. One of our moms told me that she saw on the village Facebook a statement from one of the mothers in the neighborhood who said, I don't belong to that church, I don't go to that church, but I thank God that church is in my neighborhood. I would offer that that's a part because we had a trusting, loving environment with both church, school, and it extended to the public.
In fact, the local public school did a little kind of initiative. It was a beautiful thing. So anyway, that was just the sidebar. We can shift that mindset maybe as you go along. Ministry of presence.
Again, I would say showing up. We as a pastoral staff, my associate pastor and I, when I was associate pastor there as well, we would seek ways of showing up into the life of the school. We taught confirmation. We'd be available to teach religion class. Actually, I had a running invitation with our junior hires as well that our teachers could bring me in on any time, and the students could play Stump the Pastor. They could ask me anything they wanted about the Bible, about faith, and we'd go at it. We wound up participating in the school basketball tournament. Obviously, our chapels, we sought ways of simply integrating ourselves into the life of the school. And then welcoming the school to integrate into our lives as well.
For sure. The pastor, how he does it isn't necessarily how you might do it if you're a pastor. And in fact, we have 3 pastors, and they all didn't do it necessarily the same. Although we did usually stick some sort of costume on most of them once in a while. But it's crucial you find your way and connect with the kids so they don't see the pastor as the dark overlord who only you go to when you're in big trouble. And that's right. Which is not pastoral, is it? Principals connection, same thing. I would have connection with not just Bible study groups, but just people who didn't have kids anymore in the school, or people who never had kids whatsoever, because we wanted it to be their school. They were given their money, and all I did was thank you for supporting the school, because there were a whole bunch of people who could have said, I don't have kids in school, I'm out. And there were a couple every once in a while, you know, when we first started going big on, hey, church, schools, and ministry, there were some families that said, you know, we don't like this. Well, it was mostly when the church decided to put air conditioning in the school. This was like 2008. I mean, we were sweating for a long time, you know. So 2008, and someone had a problem with that. Like, how many of you go to work without air conditioning? Raise your hand. All the teachers don't, you know. So if that happens, right? But for the most part, people hopefully saw me as their principal, even though they didn't have kids.
And we tried to create a regular message of value for our school ministry is the way that we connect to this community, and it builds community for our church life.
For sure, yeah. And we have to establish parameters for when it's important for both of us to be there, otherwise you're going to burn out. So like, you got this one, I got this one, we're both going to be at this one. So you know how to do that, but you need to be there. FaceTime is important, but you don't have to be at everything all the time. And that also speaks to people have to know that you know, we have families, and that's a value too, and that's all right, yeah. The willingness to take one for the team, I wanted to just say, we had an annual retreat where we recapped the strategic plan, and we would have a 5 to 10 year game plan for staffing, and approach who gets to hire next. And so, you know, we would arm wrestle or whatever we do, but it's like, you know, it's not
Texas cage match.
Yeah, right. the schools are endless pits of need, right? As far as the people, right? And churches are, if you're doing it right, because you have a lot of people who need. So we couldn't always hire what we wanted right then. But we would put it on a 5 to 10 year grid so that if it wasn't my year, I knew it was coming. And if it wasn't there, you know, and not us versus them, but sides of the street. Was it time to get another DCE? You bet. Okay, I'm going to wait for this next teacher's aid or something. So
we would seek simply to say we're both pursuing a Christ likeness for the total ministry, and that then allowed us to say there's going to be times when the church will lift up the value of staffing needs for the school as a high value. There are some times when the school would say we're going to lift up the needs of staffing for the church as a high value.
Right, for sure. And we were always all in it together, and we made it through probably 3 recessions, or I don't know. It started in 2004, so however many, counted up, that's what we went through. So there was never any money. And at times we had to kind of take one for the team, meaning when some people were maybe in boards or wherever saying, you need to cut people, we would hopefully creatively say, let's look at the budget. How about if we, as church leadership, we had other pastors too, how about if we as church leadership took a pay cut and froze everybody and we keep everybody? And I will tell you that made a big statement. Now I'm not saying that everyone can do that, and everybody's budget is different. But we said, you know what, there's going to be some people retiring. Attrition will happen. Can we not do this in January? Please, in the middle of school year, you know, so just like that sort of thing. And people saw it's very important to keep our team. I recognize that you can't always do that, but we were able to.
Our mindset would be that's going to be our first value.
Yes.
Is to try to preserve jobs, even if we sacrifice. And I found a lot of times when we step forward to say we're going to sacrifice as leaders, I would have lay members then saying, all right, we need to relook at our stewardship.
I got a checkbook. Yeah.
And work harder.
Yeah, so that was awesome. Yeah, so that's how we dealt with it anyways. All right. Then finally, shared fun. We like to have fun all the time, fun with fundraisers. We would budget for staff parties. It's worth the money. We would have 2, we had Christmas and end of the year where everybody, including volunteer staff and just people who were just here for a couple hours, at school, young teens that came to work in aftercare, that sort of thing, they would get, it was all food, beverages if you're over 21, 2 tickets, that's all you get, and then, but it was fun, everyone looked forward to it because we closed down childcare for that afternoon, right before Christmas break, so that everyone could come. So the childcare people wouldn't be like, oh, okay, well here I am again, working from home. So that was just appreciated. Now, like I said, that evolved over time, because at first we did it where childcare stayed because we didn't know what to do, and it's like, okay, that made people say, we will not do that again, you know. So, you make mistakes, you learn. Right? All right. And shared fun. We celebrated our successes from basketball to we got National Blue Ribbon School. So it wasn't just like the school people celebrated, the congregation was like our school, you know, because it wasn't like, oh, they're sucking all the money. No, it's your school. Thank you for allowing us to do this. This is a wonderful school, and people want to come. It's because of you, congregation. Thank you.
And I'd offer as a pastor, I mean, I find a lot of times in ministry, you know, we Lutherans are such good, faithful servants who also don't desire any glory, that whenever God actually produces any fruit among us, we'd say, well, all right, that box is checked, let's move on to the next thing.
Right.
You know, and not take the time to celebrate and say, look at what God did.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we get a chance to glorify our Savior, and that joy is attractive, it's infectious. It also, I think, creates an environment where you start thinking creatively. How else might the Lord be producing fruit among us? What else can we do to support His work in our lives?
People want to come to the staff, you know, because we're a party bunch, you know, and you have a party team. If you're more of the check the box, get going, which I'm kind of like that sometimes, like, okay, next. But have a party team go, whoa, where's our party? You know, don't make it happen. Usually it's like preschool and kindergarten teachers or first grade teachers.
They're good at it.
All right. Always remember to take the job seriously, but just not yourself. Hopefully, you know, you recognize that that's how we roll. And mindset shift takes time. So we hope we've given you a little food for thought, so that maybe you can go back and help your folks just little by little, just to think.
So we want to be mindful of the fact that, you know, you probably haven't eaten for at least 45 minutes. But are there, you know, any questions or anything that you know, again, for you know, if anything you're on our PowerPoint, you're like, wow, I'd like to grab that, you know.
Or did we answer what you had initially talked about? I think just the team.
You can hit us on the app. But are there any questions right now?
How do you go about making content that is helpful for elementary school to middle school? Because at least our middle schoolers are like, oh my gosh, this is the lamest thing I have ever
You mean
seen.
chapel?
Yes.
So what we did, I mean, at first it was, I have a background in theater,
Okay.
so at first it was a little bit of our just saying, okay, you know, the senior pastor and I, we're going to get in a room, we're going to try to figure some stuff out. But it opened the door to then allow other people with creative gifts to start participating. Mm-hmm. It grew to the point where at the end of the school year in June, Jen would make sure that she had budget set aside and would invite us out to a huge lunch, and we'd spend the entire afternoon mapping out the entire next year of chapel. We started with what scriptural spiritual lessons would we want the junior hires to learn, or the students in general. Then we would take a look at what is popular among them that we might be able to capture or connect to. We would take a look at what are some tried and true things that we know work in chapel, and then we would start assigning specific series and specific weeks to writers.
And
they would produce
purposes.
And whatever they produced, we all agreed we would jump in. If they needed actors, if they needed, you know, tech equipment, we'd be the ones to go out and make it happen.
It was a brainstorming thing. We had secret 8th grade man. You know, so the secret 8th grade man was the one that was like, everyone's supposed to do kind things, and secret 8th grade man would be on the lookout. You know, so just like junior high, their eyes are like in their head constantly, and so they're not going to like anything until they sort of do. You know.
Actually, the first series that we did with that, the main character, we actually wound up grabbing one of our junior hires who we thought had some dramatic, you know, ability.
Potential.
We wrote the script, we filmed it, and we employed other junior hires to be characters, because his role was to create, or he was drafted by an agency called Good, which was God's outstanding overlooked do-gooders. And he had to do things that would be to the glory of Christ, not to the glory of himself. But then there was a reporter in the group that was trying to figure out, why is he doing good stuff? You know, and the kids wound up connecting to it. We started asking them at the end of that series, because he'd always find a secret file in his locker, you know, in the film. Then we started asking the junior hire teachers, could you start drafting secret documents, you know, secret file documents for the junior hires? You've now been drafted by the agency Good. This week, this is your mission to accomplish in the school. The kids started doing it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they loved that series so much that we got to a point where we did a fine arts class that taught junior hires how to create a chapel. The ones that participated in it started writing the Secret 8th Grade Man series for us.
There's a lot of, I mean, it's a lot of work, so make no
It was.
mistake. But, you know, a good point that filming stuff sometimes is easier than doing it so
Yeah.
we, you know, like a beginning film and then do the lesson or something, you know,
Well,
the live lesson, something
And then
like
notice
that.
we'd be looking at the kids that love tech then. Now they
Yes.
didn't have to be the actors in front. They can
Yeah.
help us with the filming. You know,
Yeah.
it really
The eighth graders can do
engaged
smoke
much
machine.
more.
They like that at least, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
their eyes come down. Oh, smoke machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's just real similar to what you're saying, but I think it's a mind shift for the junior high kids to realize it's not about them. And if they can have some buy-in coming up with product, we had that before from schools mixed it for a while. They encouraged like all this little kitty stuff, this baby stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, help us. Like you
Right.
guys help come up with the content. You guys figure out what days of the week, and then they had some ownership of it. And they realized, hey, this is